So hi everyone, and welcome to the very first of many discussions in the Tenacious Tycoon series. So my name's Sarah Flynn, and next to me you will see Lee Eilers, and together we are the Tenacious Tycoons. So we were brought together through networking, and Lee and I had this exceptional idea to, between us, join forces and hopefully impart some wisdom on you good people today and for the rest of the year. So, really what we are about, we're both entrepreneurs. We come from very humble background, in the sort of 9 to 5-ish grind, shall we say, from the employment world, and we've both taken very different paths from there, and today we are both very successful entrepreneurs. So we predominantly invest in property. We both also do our own investing outside of property as well. So for myself, I also invest in stocks and shares, and I do some trading, and I also hold some physical gold as well as some other bits and bobs. So I will just hand over to Lee now so he can give himself a bit of an introduction.
Yeah, so I'll just add on to that and say hi everyone. This is our first one, as Sarah said, so be kind to us if we've made a bit of a mess of all this. But the idea is just to have a bit of fun with it all. We've set up what we think are 4 of the more important areas in being successful ultimately, whether that's in business or anything else. So we've identified that, and as we've put the title on for today's topic of discussion is just the importance of mindset in business. So Sarah, I'll give it back to you. I believe you've got some points to run through to begin with that we can chat about.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Lee. So quite a couple of sort of number of things, I suppose, today that I want to cover off, all at a high level, but just to give you all a flavour of things that have happened to Lee and I over the years in business and as entrepreneurs, and things that we probably believe, will help overall to be mindful of and to be prepared for from a mindset perspective when you are starting out in business, because it's so important to get that mindset right. And if you don't get it right from the offset, it is fair to say, I think, Lee will probably agree that you are probably destined for failure. Mindset, everybody says, and it's so true, is absolutely everything when it comes to being an entrepreneur. So the first thing that I thought we could discuss, Lee, is all around resiliency. And I will just open that up a little bit, because I actually think, and it's probably a bit of a controversial point, that people who do better in business and who kind of take that leap of faith and become an entrepreneur generally have sort of do better when they've had some sort of previous hardship in life. And I speak from my own experience there, but what I tend to find is that most people that I've spoke to have already had, the real great people that have made huge successes of themselves have already had, or experienced great turmoil or emotional pain or something that's turned their life upside down or made their life difficult for a period of time, and they seem to be able to carry that resiliency over into the business world. Because when you're getting started in business, it's a very lonely, difficult world, and it is crap, and people don't talk about it. People only talk about the end game and where they are, but people don't speak about the difficulties that they had and the challenges that they faced at the start. And I think that to be resilient and have that, really kind of hardened shell, just to be able to bat off the repeated no's after no, every time something doesn't work, and that could go on for months, it could go on for years, and people just don't talk about that side of business and how you really have to build up that thick skin. Would you agree, Lee?
I couldn't agree more, to be honest, Sarah. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, without divulging into our past and whatever else has happened to us, we both know bits of our individual stories, and we know that we've been through the mill a little bit. And I think that it's not just a matter of having gone through it, it's the matter of having gone through it and come out thriving from it. And it's a big topic at the moment, and particularly what's been happening with the pandemic that's been kicking around since the start of 2020. There's a lot of businesses and a lot of people, unfortunately, that have sunk as part of that process because it's got hard. But there's also those that are thriving through it, and there's those that will thrive with when it finishes and comes to a close and things can resume with some semblance of normality and business resumes, as it were. And that's because those businesses that have built themselves up to really kind of manifest what they want through a really hard patch of time, ultimately, it's setting themselves up to just, absolutely smash it, frankly, when it becomes easier because you've got through the tough time. And that's the other point, really. There's always a tough time. There's never an easy point, really. There's ebbs and flows. There's always that graph of things going well and things not going so well, and things being absolutely appalling. I'm trying to watch my language here, but the point is that there are the highs and lows no matter what you do, and you have to be able to deal with both. It's great to be on a high and to really ride that wave and enjoy yourself and have the luxury of that, which is a key part of what we do and what we're going to talk about, but also to be able to handle the lows and the dips as well, because at that point, if you give up, all the hard work you've done before that is ultimately for nothing. And it's the same as if you don't push yourself through it and come back out of it and just stay where you are, you're not going to succeed. So it's building up that resiliency of being able to push yourself through when things get rough and when things get hard, and really just push yourself out of that and set yourself up in such a way that you will just thrive beyond it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you couldn't have said more there from my perspective. I think you kind of covered everything that that I was thinking and more. Yeah, and I think, the thing with resiliency is when you do get to those tough places, it's about reflecting back on other situations in your life and thinking, okay, how did I deal with that then? Did I deal with it well? Did I deal with it really poorly? And almost kind of analysing and doing some real deep self-reflection, because to have that resilience, what you really need to do is look back on those things and work out what you did wrong. If it didn't go so well and you did fall apart, then why? And then you need to change that to be able to push through the pain of business, going forward. And equally, if you got through a really tough time really well and you handled it really well, then again, using those same tools and those same coping mechanisms, kind of whatever was personal to you at that time, taking those and using them again to push you through that kind of starting or buffer period, when you first get into business. So absolutely, I think they were all really, really key points there. And I think the other thing that I wanted to mention today, whilst we were talking, it brings me nicely on from resiliency actually, was the whole piece about when you face those hard times, having a support network, because there is nothing more important. There's this kind of rise at the minute for me that we keep hearing about the solopreneur, and to me it's a bit of a false economy, and it's kind of false advertising. And I'm not saying that people can't do it alone, because of course you can be a one-man band and you can absolutely have your own business and do your own thing, and that's fine. But choose whether you like it or not, all those people still have an excellent support network around them, whether it's friends, family, whether they've got accountability buddies or mentors, and we'll come on to talk about all those things in detail in a minute. But they ultimately do have all those things. They're not just sat at home without any support, because you just can't do business alone. And I think that is a real thing when it comes to mindset. When the going gets tough, or you need some advice, or you're not sure, or you need to make a really difficult decision, you have to have people to turn to, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, ultimately, that's how we got started doing this, because we've been able to get into a network of people that are like-minded, that help you push each other on. And, ultimately we gelled in that, which is fantastic. So that's why we've been able to do something like this. But that's what it's about. It's not necessarily about being surrounded by people who do what you do. Sometimes it is genuinely just about having someone to talk to when things get rough. And I think that's a big part of why people struggle with mental health, again, through this same time period that we're talking about. But even just generally, solopreneur, it's one of those terms that's getting bandied about at the moment as being a real big showstopper ultimately. And I don't like it. That might be a bit contentious, but it's the same as people overuse the term entrepreneur when they're actually not. But solopreneur just takes it to that next level, where you've been celebrated for going through hardship and figuring things out for yourself and struggling through ultimately, which, okay, that's great on one side. But I mean, this session is all about mindset. And if that's your mindset, that you want to get into running your own business and doing it all on your own without help from anyone else, without any support network, without staff that you can lean on, or business partners, or whoever it may be, you're going to get stuck and you're going to find it hard. But even if you are successful through that, you will not enjoy it. And what's the point in doing something that you don't enjoy? I mean, we ultimately have one life, and this is a big message of mine. It's kind of irrespective of what your beliefs may or may not be. At the end of our time on this earth, we don't actually know what happens next. There's very little evidence to support what may or may not be beyond this life. And assuming that this is all we have, why do we want to go through it suffering? So if you want to start a business, fantastic. It's a great way of starting things for yourself and being able to be self-sustaining. But at the same time, if you are hustling so hard that you're working maybe 10, 12, 15 hours a day on your business, although it may be successful financially, are you actually getting any satisfaction from your life? Because where's the enjoyment? Where's the social aspect to it? And having that support network is just so key, because who do you lean on if you don't have that? So yeah, I think being a solopreneur is a little bit overrated. I've certainly learned that lesson. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie.
No, I think it's really interesting because I really agree with you there. You were saying, oh, I feel like, saying that a solopreneur, is a bit sort of an overrated thing, and it probably is a bit of a contentious thing for you to say, but I completely agree. It's become like this word that's been, as you say, just bandied about all over the shop, without any kind of true understanding or meaning of what it is. Because my challenge, as kind of we were just discussing there, is, does that really exist? Does a solo, is that can a solopreneur really exist without anybody else? Because my argument would be no. Even if they're representing themselves as a one-man band, and they're representing themselves, and the brand is based on them, there still has to be other people in the background. Because even if they're just outsourcing things, they're not doing it alone. Many of these people probably have VAs, or they'll probably have content managers, and I think that those ideologies get lost because people are now looking at other people like that, and that is an issue with mindset, because again, those people are creating almost that idealistic, unrealistic life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And other people then try to aspire to that. They think, oh, I've got to do it all, and I'm going to do it all on my own. And actually, that reality doesn't exist, does it? As you and I know, really, there's no such thing as that. Like, you have to have support, and you have to have help. And I think, that kind of brings me on to the next point. We were talking about friends and family, and we're talking about support in general, networking, like you were just saying, how you and I met, and networking with like-minded people, and as you said, Lee, not necessarily people that are in the same industry as you do, but people that have got the same overall ideologies and the same ambitions. I think, is vitally important, because sometimes not everybody has the luxury of obviously having friends and family to support. And I certainly know, I have a very, very, very supportive immediate family, which is lovely. But me and my wife have been met with some quite unexpected responses from people who are quite close relatives to us, actually. People writing things to us, we've sort of celebrated a property that we've converted or something, and people have like openly slated us in comments on Instagram, and it's frightening, because you always think that the people closest to you are going to be you sort of favorite and your best supporters, and sometimes they're not, and that can be the ones that hurt the most. So I think that's also why it's really good to widen your net, because not everybody has that immediate support network. But sort of doing the external networking, as you and I have done, and meeting those sort of like-minded people, really, I think, helps take you to the next level and gets you through those difficult times. And when you're not feeling great, you do have people to fall back on it and kind of rely on. And I suppose that brings me nicely to my next point, and this is definitely your area of expertise, Lee, as a coach. The whole world of kind of accountability coaches, actual coaches, and mentors. What are your thoughts on those from a mindset perspective, and how important do you think they are?
Where do I start? I could go on forever on that, couldn't I? The bottom line is, it's important. And there's so many reasons why. I'm trying to think of what the key ones would be ultimately, but it's as you say, the people that are closest to you don't always necessarily understand what it is you're going through or what it is you're doing. And both sides of those are actually quite dangerous, because if you have a wider family or a wider support network that doesn't understand necessarily your business, for example, they can't really help and prop you up when things go bad and you need a bit of business help ultimately. So that's where it's good to obviously have a mentor who understands the industry that you're working in. Similarly, though, if they do understand the business, but they don't necessarily understand the struggles that you're going through with it, or they understand business generally, but not your specific industry, it's the same problem again. They cannot really support you because they don't understand the situation well enough to offer that. They can obviously offer a supportive ear, they can listen, they can give you a shoulder to cry on when you need it, which is kind of inevitable in what we do as, as business people. But ultimately, because you need people who are a bit more specialized in that, that's where coaches, masterminds, mentorships come into play. You have your mentors who in my definition, are very much kind of experts in their field, whether that's a business industry, whether that is in a certain type of coaching or therapy or something like that. Then you've got your coaches who are just a bit more general. What we do as coaches is we're there to support people and to make them accountable. But ultimately, we're not really telling people something they don't know. There are elements of that because ultimately we all are on a journey of self-discovery. However, the coaching aspect of it isn't to teach, it's to support and to kind of celebrate and to really lift people up so that they can achieve what they want to achieve, doing what they know what they need to do. It's just maybe giving them a point in the right direction or a bit of a nudge here and there. And then your mastermind, again, it's that support network that you mentioned. So again, the beauty of that, and I think it was in Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, so I know he didn't actually quote this, is my understanding, but he did write it, is that you're only as strong as the people you surround yourself with. He said it's the strength of the 5 closest people around you is who you ultimately become. Whether or not that's true is again a contentious point, but it is ultimately true that if you surround yourself with different types of people who are all going in a similar direction to you, they may not be doing the same thing as you, but they offer different capabilities and different levels of support. So I'm a massive advocate for masterminding because you may not have any one expert in there on what you're specifically trying to do, but there'll be facets of your business, say, or life or whatever it is you're in a mastermind for that you're not necessarily an expert in, and you just need that experience from someone else, shall we say. So I would defer to you absolutely on trading and stocks and shares. I know a little bit of it. I can do some myself, but I've not studied it like you have. So by being in a mastermind with someone like you, then I can quite easily lean on you should I need some advice on that or some kind of insider knowledge or just a bit of support on what I'm doing, and vice versa. There's things that I've learned through getting educated to become a coach, and these will be a lot of things that you may not have touched on, and it's the same thing. You get to leverage that side of it as and when you need it, but it's not something that's directly involved in your own business and similar to mine. So having that whole network is just so crucial, and it's been so beneficial to me personally that I can't advocate setting these things up more.
Yeah, I think that's really true, and I think what a lot of people think when they're thinking about embarking on taking on like a coach or a mentor or anything of that description, is people just see cost.
Yeah.
So they have this thing of, oh, I'm not going to pay somebody to kick me up the arse, and I'm not going to pay somebody to sort of have a shoulder to cry on because my husband will do that, or my auntie will do it for me. And I think that that's such a misconstrued and misguided and misunderstood kind of concept, really, of exactly what a mentor is for. And I know Lee is similar. I pay a heavy amount a month and have for a considerable period of time to masterminds and mentors. But I would 100% say that is one of those things that you have to speculate to accumulate, and those people undoubtedly, I would say from my perspective, and I think Lee would echo this, have got me exactly where I need to be today, and I definitely wouldn't be there without them, because it's, and as Lee said, it's that level of support, it's the level of knowledge that they've kind of been there, they've done it, they've got the t-shirt, they understand, they can provide that guidance. It's like your own personal Yoda, and that's what everybody wants. You have to pay a bit of money for Yoda, but it's worth it, and it absolutely is. And people don't see that side of it. I think, when people start leaping into business, they're all about cost saving, and yes, of course you have to do that, make no mistake. I'm not here to say spend frivolously and be ridiculous, but understand what your budget is and make sure that you budget for a level of support, whether that is a network, whether it's, like Lee said, a bit more of something a bit more elitist, like a small mastermind group, or whether it is the full-blown one-on-one mentorship. Whatever you can afford and whatever your remit is, set aside a budget, because it will get you where you want to be, definitely, and probably quicker than you would if you did it alone, without a doubt.
Yeah, and I was just going to add on to that as well, just kind of bringing it back around to what we led with, which is about resiliency. I mean, we've named what we're doing now, Tenacious Tycoons, and the word tenacious is all about that resiliency point. It's
Mm-hmm.
all about keeping going when things get tough, having the knowledge and experience to get past it. But then the question is, well, if you don't have that, because maybe you don't have the knowledge or the experience, well, you've got two options, well, three options ultimately, haven't you? One option is just to give up, and we've already established that doesn't get you anywhere. Option two is that you figure it out on your own and you get through it that way. Fantastic. That can take time. Option three is you leverage someone else who's been there and done that. So the benefit of being in the mastermind with a coach, with a mentor, whatever it may be, it's not just what they can give you in terms of progressing you forwards and guiding you. It's being there when things go wrong and being able to give you a solution to a problem that you've not encountered yet, that you've not yet solved yourself. And that can save you 6-12 months easily. And that's where, again, the cost benefit of all this lies. You pay onto a mastermind and people may balk at paying a few £100s a month or a few £1,000s a month or whatever it may be. I mean, these things can get ridiculously expensive, I'm not going to lie, but at the same time, how much does that save you? It's like when you talk to a good accountant, people generally don't like accountants. I'm not going to, kind of butter them up, shall we say. I personally quite like them, but the thing with an accountant is it's not about them putting your accounts together and filing them for you and telling you this and telling you that. It's about how they save you the money. And that in itself can more than pay for the fees that they charge you. So while people may balk at paying more and more for an expensive accountant versus a cheaper accountant, it's the value of what you're actually buying. And it's the same when you're paying for support. I'm not suggesting that obviously the more you pay, the better support is, because again, due diligence always needs to be done. You need to make sure you're engaging with the right people. But by paying for a level of support, if things are going wrong that could cost you money in the future, or even now, having that level of support in place will help you get through that a lot quicker. So yeah, it's kind of going away from the mindset point a little bit on that, but in a way it's not, because it's how we think about this. People are thinking with the mindset of, I can't afford this, I can't spend the money, I need to save my money, I'm not earning money, I can't afford to do it, whatever it might be, and thinking, well, I need to keep that behind, and I just can't justify paying someone that's got no tangible benefit. As a coach, if you were to employ me as a coach, I'm not necessarily going to guarantee that I can get you to generate an extra £1,000 a month or whatever it may be. However, it's the other side of that. If you're currently losing £1,000 a month or $1,000 or whatever country you're in, is there something that you need help with that a coach could help you out with that stops you losing that? So whilst they may not help you gain anything new, they stop you losing. And to me, that's a massive distinction that needs to be made, because it's not just about what you pay out and the value you get from something by buying a service. It's the value that you get intrinsically by being part of something that's bigger than yourself.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to pause for a second, because in case anyone thinks that I'm absolutely mental, it's because we are podcasting this, we're going live on Facebook, and we're also doing this on Clubhouse. So I'm just frantically trying to manage all the things on my phone, so when I'm looking down. So yeah, and I think everything you said there was completely on the money, and you are rightly, it is about mindset, because the difference between our mindset is that we can see the value in those things because we have trained our mindset to be that way, versus other people who, are too focused on the money. And someone once said to me in business, really early on in my career, do the right thing and the money will come naturally. And I thought, what? I just want to focus on the money because that's why I'm in business, because I want to make money. It's like I've just quit my job. What? And actually that couldn't be truer. It's absolutely not about the money, and that sounds such a weird thing to say, but that is the biggest thing that I see with people, from a mindset perspective, and getting it wrong at the start is they're so money hungry and they're so kind of focused on the end goal. And of course you need to understand what the end goal is, of course you do, because that's how people make goals, create plans, of course. But day to day, it's about doing the right thing every time. And I suppose like an example of what I'm trying to say about that is property is a shine, both Lee and I formerly, first and foremost, property investors. And for me, it is about doing the right thing in the property game, because I've come across lots of properties, but predominantly I'm in the HMO market. So we do house shares, and, I've seen lots of houses where I look at them and I think, yeah, God, I could squeeze 8 rooms into that, and that's going to get me £4,000 a month. But the reality is, you know, it works really nice as a 5-bed, as a and people are like, but Sarah, you're going to lose like £1,500 a month. Why would you want to do that? But it's because it's not the right thing to do. It's not the right thing to do, you know, morally, you know, by the people, you know, you are giving somebody a home, you know, and it's about those standards of living. You know, and you have to sleep at night with that on your conscience. You know, you are the landlord, you know, you've got the responsibility, you've got to comply to the regulations. And I suppose that brings me on to another saying, which is, just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. And that was something else that I learned very on in business, I suppose, was that, you know, it's often you kind of want to do all these things, and particularly me, I'm a creator and I've got loads of ideas, like 100 ideas a morning, and 99% of them never come to fruition. Because that's the problem with being a creator. I've got loads of ideas, but then I can never bother to follow them through. But you know, the reality is that I do have all these ideas, but I can't make them all happen. So I have to pick the ones that I think are going to work. And that's what I mean. You know, lots of people in business also try to do lots of things really quickly. And again, that's a mindset thing, because I think I need to make as much money and I need to move as quickly as possible. You know, and one of Lee and I's coaches, Paul, he has a really nice saying, is you have to go slower to go further. And that is, again, a mindset thing. It's about just slowing down, taking it right back, you know, and you do have to go slower to go further. You know, if you want to be a millionaire, people say it takes about an average of 5 years now. If you want to be a billionaire, who knows, probably 30 years in the making. I've got no idea. But that's the thing, is that, you know, people go, well, I want to be a millionaire by the end of the year. Well, yeah, you might, but you also will probably be in a coma in the process from being so overworked. You know, and that probably brings me kind of nicely onto the next point that I wanted to talk about. And I will let Lee kind of take the lead on this one, because I'm sure as a coach you'll have come across this before. But just all about burnout and understanding what that work-life balance is. Burnout was one of the biggest hyped up words of 2020, and very understandably so. There were so many people that were experiencing genuine burnout, and the mindset was completely off. You know, they were in a really dark place because of awful things that had happened out of their control, you know, through the pandemic. So Lee, I'm sure you've had experience of this with your coaching clients, without a doubt.
I've had it myself, never mind anyone else. But it's true. I mean, burnout, and to the same degree overwhelm, they're so big in terms of the impact that they have on what we do. Yeah, I mean, again, it's kind of, what do we say? I just kind of want to go back to a little bit what you were saying, though. So one of the key things that I focus on isn't so much about the work-life balance. It's actually something I really don't like the term for. It's because, again, that is a big part of mindset. It's what you focus on, and it's what you were saying about focusing on just the money. That doesn't necessarily bring people satisfaction. It doesn't necessarily make you comfortable with what you're doing. And if you're doing it wrong as well, I mean, you could become, you know, it is possible to become a millionaire in a very short space of time. There's no denying that. And it does take a significant amount of hard work. But you've also got to be pretty brutal, frankly, in a lot of cases. I'm not suggesting all the time, because, you know, there are ethical ways of doing it. It needs to, you know, sometimes right place, right time. Sometimes it's just finding that right niche. But the majority of people who've done it, unfortunately, they've done it through slightly unscrupulous means, where they've done it that quickly. And again, it's where people talk about the overnight success. And it's that saying of an overnight success is generally 10 years in the making. And that, again, is true. Maybe not the timeline, but it's the fact that to be the overnight success that people see publicly, they don't see what goes on behind the scenes as well to get there, and the training you've gone through, the failures you've had in the past, and all that kind of stuff. But to come back to the point, you know, with burnout and overwhelm, what people will do who want to start a business, whether they're, you know, specialist entrepreneurs, whether they want to be a solopreneur, whether they want to own a big business empire, whatever it may be, people are generally good at a select few things, and we cannot simply focus on everything, because we just don't have that capacity as human beings. It's impossible. I wish I could remember the fact off the top of my head, but it's something along the lines of, there's a certain amount of information we can process consciously in our brains every second. It's around about 10 bits of information, something like that. It might even be a little bit lower. but we're being bombarded with thousands and thousands of bits of information constantly. And that's why a lot of our biological process is just automatic. Our breathing, we don't think about. Blinking, we don't think about. Standing up, we don't think about. Sitting down, we don't think about necessarily. So it's all unconscious. So there's only so much we can handle consciously. And that has a big impact on what we do. So then when people try and push too hard on one particular thing, that gets their full attention, and it means they block out a lot of other things consciously, which then they have to either handle unconsciously or they don't handle at all. But ultimately that then gets them overwhelmed, because there's all these external things happening to us all the time and bombarding our systems, and we're not dealing with them, we're not handling them, or we're not having someone else handle them, which is where, you know, something like outsourcing really helps, or having members of staff, or having that support network. But it all ultimately leads to burnout, because you end up focused on a select few things that you can do really well, and then you try and focus again on a lot of other things that you maybe don't do so well, and you try and do too many things, and it ultimately just leads to burnout. So that's where people then talk about work-life balance, and people have this thing of, I have to work a certain amount of time, and then I have to be at home a certain amount of time. And actually, I was having this conversation this week, that leads to a lot of stress in your home life. Because what happens is you raise your conscious level when you're working, whether that's working for an employer, a company, whether it's your own business, whether it's on a side hustle. You put your focus and attention on that, and you raise your stress levels to do so. Not necessarily a bad thing, but that isn't sustainable for the long term. And then what happens though is that when you essentially are doing a business yourself, or you're working all hours a day, even if it's for someone else, you never then switch off. And a big problem we've had with a lot of people having to shift to working from home and not having the space to separate work from home is that they're always in that stress state. And that's where it's led to a lot of people being burnt out, being overwhelmed, not switching off from work, you know, not relaxing. So what I actually do when I work with people is try and find that harmony. It's not about, you know, having a decent balance where you say 8 hours a day I'm working, 8 hours a day I'm doing my personal stuff, whatever that might be, and then 8 hours a day I'm sleeping. It's a matter of just saying, well, I've got one life. What is my life all about? Where am I going with my life, and how am I facilitating that? Business, work, whatever it is a facilitation of the end result, as you've already mentioned about goals. And I think at some point we're definitely going to have a session around goals and outcomes more specifically. But it's keeping that focus in terms of what you're doing and where you're going and why you're doing the things that you're doing. Because if you're doing something that's contrary to what it is you actually ultimately want to achieve, there either has to be a very good reason to do it, and it's a stepping stone to get you where you want to be or need to be. But on the other hand, it may just be something that's causing you a lot of stress unnecessarily, and then that's a big problem. And you end up with burnout, overwhelm, illness, ultimately. You know, it does manifest itself physically, unfortunately. And you know, it's not just the mentality that it impacts, it is purely, you know, it's the whole energy that we have, our bodies and our minds. So yeah, it's a big topic, is that, and I think we should definitely cover a bit more of it as we go along.
Yeah, completely. And I just want to touch on that very last point you said there about it manifesting itself in physical forms as well. And I speak from real personal experience there. That was something that definitely happened to me a couple of years ago. I used to have this silly mentality, you know, that I've just talked really down about now, but that I would, you know, January I would come out of the hills racing, and I was so excited to try and smash everything, smash all my year goals in a month, or something ridiculous. And it really came back round to bite me on the bum, to be honest. What I couldn't work out is why I felt so poorly, because probably 10-15 years ago now, I'd suffered a little bit with mental illness, so I'd had a bit of a sort of flip with that, and it definitely wasn't that, because I felt mentally I was okay, but physically I was having all sorts of problems, dizziness, sickness, you know, sort of stomach pains. And I really thought there was something wrong, like I had like an ulcer, you know, there was something serious, like a serious issue. And kind of as time went on, I went to the doctors, and they were like, Sarah, it's just stress. Like, you're suffering from serious kind of overwhelm and stress. And I think that they're the things with the mindset, if you don't recognize early on, that those things are coming, and that you're not quite right, you know, and if you don't manage the mindset and you don't manage the stress that comes with business, you very quickly, I think, go from being okay one day really spiraling down a rabbit hole in a very short period of time. And it's quite scary. And I've seen other people that I know that have got businesses in similar positions, that you can be talking to them one week and quite literally they're on the knees the week after, because it's been, you know, as you say, this energy's been building and building and building in the background, and suddenly smash, it all comes to a head. And you know, and kind of all fall down, I think. So I think that was an excellent point, well made. And then I think the last piece, you know, kind of just to tie all this together, is kind of how people can manage the mindset. Because I think, you know, that's really important. You know, what can people do? And some of the things that I was just thinking, and I'm sure you'll have lots of ideas as well, Lee, was like meditation is a great tool for me. It was something that I discovered a couple of years back, sort of shortly after my intense physical stress episode, and it really has helped me. And people do it to varying degrees. I'm kind of like 15 minutes 3-4 times a week, that's great. And I know some people get really into it. People do an hour, 2 hours a day, like it varies, and it's kind of what works for you. There's like self-guided meditation, you know, that there's guided meditation, there's all sorts of things, you know, it's just music, kind of, you can sit, you can stand, you can lay, you know, the whole shebang. But you know, there's lots of free resources that you can go to for meditation now. I mean, nearly everywhere. I'll let you cover exercise, because you are definitely the exercise guru as a personal trainer. There's not much that you don't do. You know, and I think those sort of things, and rewards, kind of building in rewards, I'll touch upon in a minute. But you know, I'll let you cover exercise, Lee, because I do think that's a really big part of mindset and business. And people don't relate the two, but I think they're absolutely correlated and in sync, and people don't really give it enough credit.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we've tied that into another aspect of what we'll talk about in a separate episode, which is all about health ultimately, and we'll do a series of these as well. But you know, it's that whole shebang ultimately. And again, that's what I've set myself up to provide as a coach. It's not just a focus on, is it your business, is it your goals, is it your finances? It's the whole thing, which includes your mindset, it includes your physical and mental health ultimately. But it's also related to what you were saying there about meditation. I mean, mindfulness is ultimately the key word. That's the big one. Now, some people get that through meditation, and that's fantastic. I'll be brutally honest, it's not something that works for me. If I'm in guided meditation in a group, then I get a real benefit out of that, because you're around like-minded people. It's that mastermind effect again. However, just trying to do it on my own doesn't work, because my mind's too busy and I find it hard to shut off. So I cannot meditate if I'm stuck on my own, and I really struggle. And for a long time, I actually beat myself up about that, because again, bad mindset. I was beating myself up saying, why can't I meditate? I need to meditate because people say I need to meditate and I get all this from it. Simple fact is, it doesn't necessarily work for me in that setting. That's not to say it doesn't work full stop, and it will work for me in certain scenarios. And for some people, you know, who can do it or who have got a good headspace, generally speaking, fantastic. But in terms of the physical side of it, that's where I actually do my meditation. Mine's through weightlifting. And that's what I found years ago, before I even really looked into meditation. When I'm at the gym, when I'm weightlifting, when I'm training, I put myself through quite a lot of stress ultimately by doing that, because it's what I have to do to build up the body. But at the same time, it's when people talk about getting in the zone, it's something that obviously high performance athletes really specialize in. It's about getting into the zone. And you'd be surprised at how many of these actually work with professional therapists and psychologists to get them that ability to do it. And even certain things like in NLP, some of the things that we learn in there is about physical trigger points. So we all have triggers, and this is a whole different subject that again we'll probably touch on at another point. But the trigger is something that obviously results in an emotion, a feeling, or whatever it may be. It results in a certain state. And a physical trigger is exactly the same thing, but it's where you can maybe have a pressure point on your hand and you touch that and it gets you into a high state of adrenaline, or it makes you happy. It could make you sad if you really wanted it to. And it's something that actually comes out of NLP, but it's actually a really powerful exercise that a lot of athletes use. And it's the same thing for me when I do my training. I'm not someone who will go and exercise. I'm not the sort of person that screams and shouts at the gym when I'm lifting heavy weights. It's just not my personality. Again, not to discredit those that do. It's, you know, personal thing, but it's one of those things that when I'm at the gym, because I have to focus on what I'm doing, otherwise I hurt myself because of the amount of weight that I lift, I have to push everything else out of my head. So for me, that's my version of meditation, because that is me clearing my mind. And then when I'm done with that, not only have I got a clear mind that I can then attack the day with, attack the week with, whatever it may be, but I've also got the physical benefit and the various chemicals that obviously our bodies release through that. So you have to find a way of being mindful ultimately, whether it's meditation, whether it's physical exercise, whether it's just having a bit of fun and taking yourself out of a situation. It's all the same thing. It's all about getting mindful of what you're doing, why you're doing it, what state you're currently in. Is this appropriate for what I'm trying to do or what I'm trying to achieve? And yeah, it's a big topic, so I'm gonna stop there because I'll end up going on forever, and I'm conscious that we're kind of over what we agreed to do for time on this one. So
Yeah,
we tend to do this, aren't we?
no, you're right, but that's only because it's a good conversation, Lee. That's
Absolutely.
good. Yeah, no, all your points, absolutely. I think interesting you talking about the pressure points. I think, and this is definitely a conversation for another day, but I learned all about pressure points when I did some public speaking training, and I was trying to overcome my anxiety of public speaking. That's really interesting that you say that, and it's about how it all ties in, and like you say, whatever it is, like I sort of touched on before, building in rewards, and that was kind of what you were saying, Lee. Whatever it is, whatever the fun stuff is, if you just really enjoy listening to Metallica in your car at 150 decibels, then build an hour into your week that's what you want to do. Like that, it's whatever works for you, but you have to have that reward period, and it has to be consistent. It's no good saying, oh, once every 6 months I'll go for a swim, because that's just not enough motivation. It has to be weekly at least. It has to be something that ignites you, that gives you passion, that you feel excited for, and it has to be consistency. In business it's very, very, very tough, and anybody that's sat here listening right now, or watching us, you will know, if you're in business, how bloody hard it is sometimes. And if you're thinking about getting started, then if you follow us and you keep listening to what we've got to say, you will also equally realize how hard it really is, just through listening. But it's also very rewarding, but therefore you do have to build those rewards in along the way to keep that level head and to keep that sort of right mindset, as sort of me and Lee were saying. So I think we will leave it there for today. Lee, do you agree?
Yeah, well, let's stop it there for what we're recording. Absolutely. We're doing these on a weekly basis, so there'll be more to come. I can't remember if we touched on them at the beginning, but we're covering not just mindset, but we're going to be covering health, wealth, and property separately, and we'll kind of cycle through them, I think, just so that we can give a decent spread. But we will also get the odd person on here to speak, so it's not just us all the time. So absolutely, if this has been of use to people, if you're finding this interesting, then feel free to follow us on the various platforms that we're on. This will be going out in quite a few different areas as well, and again, feel free to engage with us, and we're always up for a conversation with people and happy to help.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more there, Lee. As I kind of said at the start, Lee and I really are just doing this because we want to kind of help and impart hopefully some of our words of wisdom on people, and hopefully what we sort of some of the things that we've said today and that we'll say in the future will sort of, strike a chord with you guys and resonate in some way. And if you do feel that you do want to connect with us, like I say, we are all in business together. There is nothing more important than that, and as kind of me and Lee said in the middle of this conversation, there's nothing more that with a bugbear than a solopreneur. So don't be one of those. Come and get in touch, come and like and comment and share, and we'll chat with you guys, and let's all be in business together. So thank you very much for listening and watching today.
Yeah, thanks everyone. We'll catch you next time.